Listeners, you're about to listen to a podcast with Nathan Smith from Birdie Wealth. To give you a little bit of background into the history of my relationship with Nathan Smith, I originally seen him on stage when I was early in my career and listened to the way he spoke and the way he articulated himself and his insights. And it was clear that he was an elite operator and he had a very different way of looking at things. And I was really impressed. So I was very impressed with him from the early days, and I'd follow him. He was somewhat of a hero of mine until I happened to be on a course with him where we were in a course together, and this is where we struck up a bit of a friendship. He became an unintended mentor of mine. He probably didn't think he was a mentor, but he was. And through that mentorship, we became really good friends. So I really hope you enjoy this podcast. It sounds, with this intro, it sounds a little bit like I have a bit of a bromance for him. I do. He's one of the most impressive people I've ever met. The way that he can operate in such a high level in his business, but also the way that he shows up for his family and shows up for his team. He's a pretty special human. So I really hope you enjoy this. I'd consider Nathan like a modern day Stoic, a modern day Marcus Aurelius of the finance industry, if you will. So enjoy listening to this podcast. I'm sorry it runs a little bit longer than usual, but I feel like it's a really impactful one. So enjoy.
Captain and the Coach, episode number 15. Of course, we have our regular attendee, Trav, the Captain Carruthers, myself, and we have Nathan Smith from Birdie Wealth, who has been very generous to give us his time and his knowledge, and we look forward to hearing what he has to say. And Trav, you, of course, are a very close associate of Nate's, so maybe provide us a little bit more context as to why we've invited him to be on today's episode.
Yeah, well, so today, pretty special guest today, one of my closest friends, and in my opinion, one of the most talented operators in our industry. So we've got Nathan Smith, obviously, here from Birdie Wealth. So if you've been living under a rock and haven't heard of Birdie Wealth, Birdie is one of the most successful and recognizable boutique brokerage brands in Australia, with a string of awards, a huge social media following, and settling volumes that only a handful of businesses in the country would enjoy. So they're an omni-channel brand, but I'll let Nathan touch base on that in a minute. But I just want to welcome the one and only, one of my really good friends, Nathan Smith, to the Captain and Coach podcast. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, Trav. Thanks, James. Thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure.
Perfect.
Thanks for writing that intro for us. Look, just before we get into this, for a little bit of context, Trav, you, of course, were a police officer in years gone by. So if it's okay for today, let's do this. Is knowing that you have a bromance or a man crush on Nath, is maybe you play good cop and I'll play the bad cop and maybe try and contrast and have a look at some things from a slightly different perspective, if that's okay. Nathan, I might try and challenge you or try and look at things from a different angle so we can get the most out of you and then serve our audience, who I'm going to call the players, by the way, Trav, because if you're the captain, I'm the coach, then we've got a team, and our team, of course, are players. So there we go. Anyway, you heard it here first. Back over to you, Trav.
Yeah, perfect. All right, well, I just want to provide a little bit of context. So, like for our listeners at home, my relationship with Nate, it runs deep, and mate, we're both typical Aussie footy heads. And we seem to show our affection to each other through banter and insults. So, to be honest, this podcast is already making me really uncomfortable because what we're going to talk about here doesn't come naturally to me. Generally, I like to talk shit to Nathan's face, and then I will probably talk the things that I genuinely think and feel about him are things that are probably said behind his back. So it's probably the opposite of what we see sometimes in the industry. So um, today's podcast is probably going to be either one of the longest podcasts for Captain and Coach history or one of the shortest, depending on how Nathan answers our first question. So, Nath, mate, before we get started, mate, I need your assurance that everything that I'm going to say here in this podcast remains here in this podcast. I don't want to be saying nice things about you in this podcast and you using them against me at a later date because it will completely change the dynamic of our relationships, mate. So
These
everything said in
compliments
this
are going
podcast.
straight on the website. I think I'm gonna load them straight up on the website as quotes from Trav. So
Yeah, thanks,
Keely's
mate.
in the
Yeah,
background, ready
you
to rile
really.
him
Yeah,
up for me.
I was already a little bit nervous and going against my better judgment, and yeah, in typical Nathan Smith form, you've already given me shit, mate. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, but mate, well, we're gonna do things a little bit differently today. So this isn't gonna be your typical broker style podcast, mate. We don't want to hear about Nathan Smith's story from humble beginnings to the founder of, as we said, in my opinion and most people's opinions, one of the most successful boutique brokerage brands in Australia. Mate, look, that's like, let's be honest, these podcasts have been done quite a lot. I like to call them success porn. It's just a bit of dopamine hit to sort of, yeah. So let's do things a little bit differently. So we're going to go deeper today. We're going to go into those deep and dark hidden corners of your big brain, places that are usually set aside for 3 a.m. conversations that you and I will have after one too many beers. So, mate, I hope you're ready for it, and I hope the listeners get some value out of it.
Let's go, mate. Let's rip in.
Yeah, perfect, mate. Perfect. Well, look, before we get started, for those that haven't heard about Birdie Wealth, mate, just give us a very, very quick elevator pitch of Birdie Wealth's origins, its history, and sort of where it sits today.
Yes, I've been a broker for 18 years now. So I started when I was 21. I had bought a property and was working in asset financing cars, and I was working weekends and my wife wasn't. And I looked around the dealership and I thought, this relationship's not going to last too long if I keep working weekends and don't see my wife. So I went and spoke to my broker and said, how do you become a broker? And he said, when do you want to start? And that's how I became a broker. So I was an employed broker for 9 years prior to starting Birdie Wealth. Kicked it off on my own down in Sutherland Shire in South Sydney. And we've grown significantly from then. So we now sit with a team of 40, predominantly mortgage brokering, residential business for mum and dads in the Shire. But we have branched out into a couple of other arms. One I don't even think I've told you about yet. It's due to launch in a month and a half. But we have a conveyancing business that's been running for 5 years. We have a property management business that's been running for 2. And we're due to launch our 4th business, which is Birdie Law. And we'll have a legal firm sitting alongside the Birdie brand.
No, I think we were joking. There's nothing that Birdie doesn't do, right? Like Birdie seems to be everywhere. It it's pretty impressive that you can run so many brands alongside one another, and that they seem to complement each other quite well from what I've seen. So, mate, while we're on the topic of that team of 40 of yours, mate, before we sort of get into the hard hitting questions, I just wanted to clear something up with you. Obviously, I've had quite a lot to do with your team over the years, so I know your team quite well, mate. And if I had to explain them to our listeners, I would explain them as a ragtag bunch of lunatics. Is probably a fair assumption of what your team is, mate. They're all as crazy as each other. If they're not up on stage winning awards, they're just on tables dancing at after parties. Pretty fun people to be around. But I have this theory about your recruitment strategy. So I want you to confirm or deny it for me, mate. When you're recruiting, do prospective Birdie employees undergo psychometric testing, and if they fail, that's when you hire them?
If they fail, no, my hiring process is terrible. So it's very much. I think we can make someone who's good great, and so I genuinely go a lot with a gut feel and find people that, I think will fit within the business. So our hiring process is based on the character and culture fit first, and then the competency pieces last. I think we can train anyone to do this job. It's very much a systemized, task-driven business, but you can't change people's character. You can't sit down and let's do a lesson on how to get to work on time. Let's do a lesson on how to care about a client. They've got it or they don't have it. And if they fail those character tests, it's never going to work out. We can upskill, we can train people so we can improve their competency. But for us, it's very much a character and culture fit. The people at Birdie are different. We have extroverts, we have introverts, we have a mix of characters. One thing I think you will find, and the reason why they're standing and dancing on the tables is because they feel psychologically safe here at work. They feel that they can be themselves, they can be authentic, they can be genuine, and they're accepted for who they are. So that's what we do have in common, is that people's personalities do shine through, and you see a wide variety of personalities at Birdie because they feel safe working at Birdie.
Mate, you make a really good point. You mentioned it a couple times there around character. That's probably one of the things that I noticed with your team, like that very strong character that they're great people. That they're all crazy, but they're great. They're great people. They're good people to be around. They're obviously proficient brokers and proficient operators. You wouldn't get to the level of success to be where you are, but it's. I don't think I've ever come across a group of people that just they seem to be able to get along so well, and that, yeah, like you say, that they do, that they feel so psychologically safe. Mate, your office seems more like a theme park than an office to me. You guys are having a great time. Obviously, they get the work done, but they're all having a really great time.
Yeah, I think that's we definitely do have a good time, but if you don't get the work done, it doesn't work out either. So it
Hmm.
can't just be all fun and games. It does have to. You still have to hit the standards. You still have to hit the targets you need to hit. But then we do enjoy stopping and celebrating those wins. And I think there's a lot of talk at the moment, online about the number of awards we have in the industry and how you get awards and should we have awards and how do we categorize them. But for me, it is a chance to stop and celebrate. We work so hard, we work long hours, and I think we're guilty of not celebrating those wins enough. And so I think they are important.
Can I
Yeah,
just
we'll touch on
interject
that
on a
later.
couple
I've
of
actually got
things?
to. Oh, sorry, James. Did you have something to say?
Just a couple of quick things. Nathan, I'm curious, when it comes to the word safe, did you happen to just stumble on that word yourself, as in that you want your team members to feel safe? Or is it something you heard someone else say and you thought that resonates and that's important for the environment we want to create?
No, I heard someone else say that psychological safety. You provide a workplace that has to be physically safe, right? It has
Yeah.
to meet OH&S standards and be safe. But what do they feel like coming into work on a Monday? Are they threatened that their job might not be there? Are they threatened that the company uh, might be in financial hardship? Are they threatened that their boss might let them go? Our team are coming in on Monday knowing that their job is safe, knowing that their role is safe, knowing that they know what they need to do to achieve that goal. Um, and that's my job. We talk a lot about, as a leader, do they work for you or do you work for them? And I definitely work for them, and my job's to make sure that I set them up for success. And part of that is making them feel safe.
So it sounds to me, based on what you've just said then as well, you talking out of the Simon Sinek playbook. Is that coincidence that you're saying the same things that he talks about, or is it because you by chance have been inspired by what he says?
Definitely today we'll talk a lot about Simon Sinek and some of the philosophies he has.
So,
Um,
so that one of what part of what you're talking about in terms of looking after the people in your charge as opposed to being in charge of them, that style of leadership,
yeah,
is that
I
because
think it's
you've learned from him?
definitely that Leaders Eat Last was a phenomenal book, and I think that
Okay.
definitely draws from that. So if you have interest in how you need to set yourself up as a leader who's there to serve, then I'd start with that book for sure.
Cool. Perfect. I thought it was,
Yep.
but I was just curious for what, yeah, your perspective on it.
Yeah, mate, that's mate, massive fan of Simon Sinek. I think I hijacked your forum this week, James, and posted a video about Simon Sinek. He's pretty
Oh, yeah,
amazing,
you
and
did.
obviously, Nath, you talking, it's obvious I mean that stuff resonates with me personally, and I know exactly where it's coming from. I've read that book also. So, mate, on the topic of books. So, look, as promised, today we're going to do things a little bit differently. So, those of you that probably don't know me, I am quite a collector of quotes and affirmations. I literally have hundreds of them collected over the years through podcasts, through books, through things that people have told me. And these quotes to me, they've been impactful, they've challenged me, they've reframed some of my beliefs and fueled change within myself to be better, to be a better, whether it's a broker, whether it's a business owner, whether it's a man or a husband. So what I want to do today is I want to provide some of these impactful quotes to you, Nate, because obviously these quotes have been impactful to me, and I've got some insights, and I'd love to hear your insights on these, and it's sort of going to help reframe what they mean to me, and hopefully our listeners get some value out of it. So, if you're happy to get started, mate, we'll rip in.
Far away.
Perfect, perfect, mate. I consider you somewhat of a modern day Stoic. I've studied Stoicism for a couple of years. I think I was probably drawn to it through my interactions with you. So for you, you always seem to be able to find the right words and the right situation, and you're able to sit people back on their heels and stop them in their tracks. Not in an aggressive way. It's like you'll just come in at the right time. It's not aggressive. It's not arrogant. You'll just say something and everyone will stop. So it's I really like that about you, and you've stopped me on my heels plenty of times and made me go away and have to reset my beliefs, and I've come back and clarified things with you to make sure I got it right in my head. So this is one of the quotes from one of the original Stoics, the great Marcus Aurelius, which is being tolerant with others but disciplined with yourself. So, but before I get you to chime in with your interpretation of this, I just want to provide you with a little bit of context. So, correct me if I'm wrong here, but no one sees the success that you've seen without being extremely hard on themselves and holding themselves to an extremely high standard. But what it's sort of so this is where I sort of get a little bit confused, right? Because I see you with your team. You're so calm and measured in your approach. Everything for you just seems so smooth and effortless. And this is how you turn up externally, but is this how you feel internally?
Not always. No, definitely not. Um, I still struggle with that quite often, but I'm definitely a disciplined person. There are people on my team who say I'd be the easiest person to kidnap because on my routine is exactly the same each and every day. That they know exactly where to find me. So I think that internal discipline starts, and interestingly enough, I wasn't overly disciplined in a lot of areas in my life, and it wasn't till I started business and started Birdie and understood how process worked in business. I was able to build process out in other parts of my life. So, um, from let's look at fitness, for example. I didn't understand building process in behind fitness until I started Birdie and actually took, most people take sporting analogies and bring them into business. And I actually understood the business uh, processes first and then took them across to fitness and brought them back the other way. But everything works exactly the same. I'm not reliant on motivation. I'm reliant on discipline, and discipline drives results, and then results gives you motivation to keep going. And so that's very much what I lean on is systems and process, whether it's personally or within business. I lean on those. As far as being tolerant with others, I think genuinely, if you're hiring based on character and you've got those right people in the business, my assumption is that everybody is always trying to do the best they can, and everybody's trying to make the right decision, and sometimes they just get it wrong. If they are getting it wrong consistently, it's then just a matter of mapping out, is it a skill or a will? What's the issue within the process? Why is the system breaking it down? Is there a skill that they lack, or do they not have the will to do the job? The concerning thing is that I've seen time and time again is that if they don't have the will to do it, you're in trouble. You can train and do one-on-ones and do reviews, but if the will to do the work is not there, you'll be 6 months down the track in the same position. If it's a skill thing, you can certainly upskill them and train them and fix that process. So I think it's a matter of identifying that. But
Can I
overall,
just clarify?
yeah.
Have you ever had situations where you've been able to influence will for the better? Because you said earlier that you can't train character, and I disagree with that. But I'm curious for your perspective around whether you can influence or change will.
I'll probably clarify that. It's not that you can't change character, it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to change character than it is to change competency. Yeah, so perhaps you can. I've found genuinely it's a lot harder to do, and And if
Well,
people don't have that level of self-drive and
ideally,
an
you don't want
ability to
to.
want to,
I mean,
work
you
with
don't want
them.
to convince people you'll have to arrive at work at 8:30 because it's the right thing to do. You just want them to embrace that because it is the right thing to do.
Yeah. I think as far as influencing the character side of things, it's more, you can influence if they don't understand why it's important. So if you're able to get them a clearer understanding of why something's important, you can influence it.
Yep.
So not just telling people what they should do, but why they're actually doing it, I think is important, or what the consequences are if it doesn't happen is important. So you can have an influence that way.
I
But
wholeheartedly agree with that, by the way.
so I think
100%.
that's important. Is then people understand why they need to show up to work on time, or why they need to care about a client, or why a really mundane, simple task that might look like, you know, overboard or over the top has been implemented or put in place. If you don't just tell them to do it, if you tell them why we're doing it, I think that's important as well.
So that's the same thing as influencing the will, then, isn't it? That approach is understanding how the impact of what they do will influence other parts of the business or their own role or something of the sort.
Yeah, I think so. Looking at what that flow-on effect might be. But yeah, again, if I had a choice to work on skill or will, I would choose someone where I can work on the skill for sure.
I think all of us would.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Man, from what I've seen, obviously being around you and your team over the years, you always lead by example. Like it's not as much as do what I say, it's do what I do. You set a great example for your team and you work really hard. Or can't believe I'm telling you to say that, but yeah, go. That's going to lead into my next question. I'm going to give you a little bit of shit, but but mate, I'll jump straight in, right? But I do, I honestly do think you work really hard, and this leads into my next question, all right? So you know how much I love to give you shit about you never actually doing any work. You're always at award ceremonies or at charity golf days or at a long lunch somewhere. I don't know how you ever get any work done. But like the reality is Birdie didn't build itself. Birdie isn't where it is today because it just happened organically, right? Like obviously a lot of work. It's evident that a lot of work's gone into it. Look, I understand from my own personal experience, like I've had to go to some pretty deep and dark places over the last 8 years to come out of the other side into success. And there's a quote from Michelangelo that reads, "If you saw how much work went into my art, you wouldn't really be that impressed." So I guess my question to you is, did you to go to any of these deep and dark places to build this juggernaut that is Birdie Wealth? And talk me through those early days and did it have much of an impact on your family? Did it have much of an impact on you personally with your mental health? And did you know going in the price it was required to pay by not only you, but your family to put yourself in the position where you are today?
I think Birdie Wealth really hit its strides in about year 4, and that was when I started putting in more hours, getting up early and kicking off at 4 a.m. every day. And this isn't, 4 a.m. once a month where I take a photo of my watch and post it online. This is each and every day. I'm up at 4 a.m. I'm working, and I'm back at the office till probably 6:30 every day. Um, I am working hard, but I'm also still present. I've got a young family. I've got 4 kids and a wife at home. And so life's busier at home than it is at the office. And so for me, it's just being present and being where your feet are. I've got a separate work phone. So you've just given me shit about taking time off. I was on annual leave yesterday and I didn't have my work phone with me. I wasn't contactable by clients or banks or on the email. My team have my personal number. If a fire really blew up in one day, they can reach out and contact me. Uh, but it's about being present and being where your feet are. When I get home at 7 o'clock at night, the phone's on airplane mode. I'm there and I'm present with the family. On the weekends, I'm not working. The phone is off and I'm there and I'm present with the family. So, yes, I put in hours and I put in time, but it's very focused time. When I am at the office, I'm there and I'm focused on that part of my life. And when I step away, I'm there focused on my family and being present there. The other part for me too is that like I genuinely love my job. Like I love Mondays. I love coming to work. I love building businesses. And so um, there is a saying that says, do what looks like work to others but feels like play to you. And that's very much what coming to work is for me is I love the challenge and the complexity of bringing all these personalities together, building brand around it, starting with a simple logo, drawing it down, and then turning that into a business that's operating and running on its own. So I find a lot of joy in that. And so it comes easy for me to do the long hours and do the hard work.
That leads right into my next question, actually, and I really like this one's a banger, and I'd be really interested to hear you expand on this. And you've sort of just touched on it then, so it'd be interesting. So the quote reads, "Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want." And this is from the great Naval Ravikant. I don't know if you know Naval. Mate, he is like a legend amongst legends. I love his stuff, right? So the reason why this one speaks to me, especially in the early days, well, I'm just going to talk a little bit about myself, and then I want to get your insights, right? Like, mate, I was not a proficient broker or a business owner. I was far from it. I was great at chasing stolen cars, kicking in doors, and arresting violent offenders, but I had no idea how to write a loan. I had no idea how to build a brand or what a profitable business looked like. So for me, I muscled my way to success. There was no finesse involved in what I did. It was just sheer will and force that got me to where I was, especially in the early days. It wasn't until later that spending time with people like yourself that I was able to build that finesse. I didn't know what I didn't know. I wouldn't consider myself a naturally gifted. My path was set out for me. I knew where I was going. I was never going to make a mistake. So my question to you is, I might be wrong here, right? But it seems to me that things almost come effortless to you. I watch you, and it's like you're an expert sniper. You're so calm and you're so measured in the way you go about things. It's like you take a breath, you take your shot, and you rarely miss. Am I wrong here, or is there periods of your life where you're grinding and there's no end in sight? You're struggling mentally, that you're filled with self-doubt. Are these things that, I'll be honest, I know we're having this conversation here for our listeners. I've actually never had this conversation with you, funny enough, and it's something that I've thought about a lot. Is that something that you've struggled with in the past?
I still struggle with it now. It's like, when is enough? Like, is the team big enough now that's enough, or do I want to keep growing? So, when will you be happy, and what drives happiness, I think is tricky. And I think we're all saying, when this happens, then I'll be happy, or when that happens, then I'll be happy. So I think part of it's just in falling in love with the grind and falling in love with that day-to-day part. Um, is part of it as well. I love you seeing me starting up business because I love that startup phase of the business. And so, prior to being a birdie, I hadn't been in one job for more than 3 years. So I'm having to learn to fall in love in the grind of the job, 8 years in and 9 years in and 10 years in, of just grinding away at the same kind of business, reinventing it and finding new ways to keep that spark going, has been pretty important to me. Yeah, in relation to that role. As far as, calmness in decision making, again, it's a very stoic outlook of the fact that I'll never know what the other path leads to. So I try to make a decision on what I think is best. I think running a business is a lot like parenting. Is most business owners are genuinely trying to do what they think is best, and if you do try to do what you think is best for your team, most of the time you'll get it right. Sometimes you won't. Just as a parent, you do what you think's best for your kid, and most of the time you get it right, and then sometimes you don't. So, for me, it's a matter of making a decision. I'll never know what the outcome was if I went the other way anyway. So the decision's a decision, and whatever the outcome will be is what it will be.
Fantastic. Yeah, this leads into, I'm not even going to call this a quote. We'll call this a TC original. This is something that I wrote down a few years ago, and it's just something I've come up with and something that I really struggle with. And when I wrote this down, I firmly believed it, and I've been challenged on it by some very, very intelligent people, and I still don't know where I sit. So I'm going to ask you this question. So we'll call this a TC original, and it's good enough isn't good enough. So my thought process around this is, I want to be elite at everything. I want to be an elite business owner. I want to be an elite broker. I want to be an elite father. I want to be an elite husband. Everything about is always, I'm so competitive with myself. And I guess when I have these conversations with people, they're like, Trav, you're holding yourself to a standard that is unattainable. You are never going to get to where you want to be. You are never going to be completely fulfilled. And I'm like, I do enjoy the grind, right? And I'm happy to pay that price for success. But I just want to get your thoughts on it and challenge me on this. Is my thought process on this flawed? Like you said just before, when is enough enough? Like, is it so, mate, shower me in your stoic voodoo magic here and mate, reframe my thought process on this. I just want to understand. I just want to understand what if you have the same challenges that I do and how you deal with that.
Yeah, I've got two angles for this answer. So I agree and disagree with you, and I'll start with the part I agree with you on, and then I'll tell you everything that's wrong with your quote. So first of all, as far as where I agree with you, I think, you know, as a business, you need to have certain standards, and last year, I'm very proud of the tenure that we've got at the team here. We have a lot of people in our team who are kind of 5, 6, 7 years into business, and I became really proud of that statistics that people join Birdie and they hang around. But there was a couple of people last year who were at Birdie that probably shouldn't be hanging around, and I forego the standard that I was expecting of them in their role to hold on to that tenure and that legacy of saying, well, look how long I've got these people staying in the business. So having them finish up at the end of last year rose the standard and rose the bar of the team. And we came into this new year hitting record months back to back because the team acknowledged the fact that there was a standard at Birdie. And if you're not meeting it, it's not the place for you to be. So keeping that standard and keeping that line in the sand is a good thing. And not just for the people who aren't performing, but for the people who are performing, if they can see the fact that you are keeping the team to that standard, it helps them step up and perform. So that's a
Can I
part that
just ask,
yeah, please.
was that temporarily and unintentionally putting ego before the standards, or compromising standards with ego as a, you know, the pride that comes out of the tenure, which
Yeah.
is obviously something to be happy with, but
Yeah.
knowing that it may be unintentionally impacting culture and morale for everyone who notices that you've got some poison pills in your business.
Yeah, definitely. There was two parts to it. One was a pride thing of having a team with long tenure is something to be proud of. And the other part too was that I just wasn't setting aside time as a business owner to make sure I had that recruitment pipeline ready to go. So I didn't have somebody to step into those shoes straight away. And the minute I've started to keep and build that pipeline and keep that pipeline, if I know who my next few brokers are going to be, I know who my next few para brokers are going to be, it gives me the confidence to hold that standard firm, because if they don't work out, I have a team that I can approach and aim to recruit straight away. So that were my two kind of learnings from last year.
Nice.
Where do I disagree with you on? Plenty, obviously, but let's just start on this point here. So, is good good isn't good enough? I think sometimes we learn as we actually play as well, and so I have a saying that's almost the complete opposite in our marketing team predominantly, but if it's not wrong, it's right. It's a saying I have. So what you think is the right way to do something isn't the way that your team think is the right way to do something. And so while you want to have a certain way in which you want things to happen, it's still very subjective on that's the way that you think is best, and allowing your team to run with it in the way that they think is right may be just as good, but they're also running it in the way that they want to run it, and they'll be far more confident. They'll implement it far better, and the process will be far smoother because it's their idea and it's their way of doing it. But I think so often we're so held back on getting something perfect and right that these ideas just sit on your table for months and years and never actually get out to market, where I think there is value in getting stuff out to market that's 80% put together and letting the market give you feedback on what's right and wrong about it, and then improving it off the back of that. So you would both know, you both do plenty of content. As you look back on your first podcast compared to your last podcast, and the difference in quality would be significantly different. You probably look back at your first podcast and go, it wasn't good. It was really poorly worded. It wasn't put together right. But it's not until you are actually acting as a practitioner, implementing it, getting feedback from market, that you can improve on it. So that's where I'll kind of push back on your quote and say, well, sometimes, yeah, it's not always about having it perfect. It's about getting it to market.
Yeah, otherwise, if we think on that point, Nathan, I'm just thinking about early tools like the early days of mobile phones. We had these bricks that people literally had to carry around in big cases, or the iPad. The first version of the iPad was almost an inch thick and extremely heavy, and nowhere near had the functionality of later versions. But as you said, it was an imperfect product that was refined and improved as they went.
Well, James, I got to hear you speak recently at a conference, and you and I were both speaking at a conference, and you make it look easy standing up there. You're standing up there and talking, but I'm sure you weren't like that when you did your very first conference. It's only through practice over and over again that you feel more comfortable in that role. So you didn't wait to be perfect before you went and did your first talking gig. You kind of, bit down hard, stood on stage and got through it, and then got feedback from the audience, got feedback from yourself, and then have used that to improve that speaking gig.
Yep, spot on.
That leads me into a question I got for you, Nate. So you're an extremely confident person. Like, you just have this air about you and this confidence. And a lot of the times, especially in our industry, confidence can be misconstrued and misinterpreted as arrogance. But the thing that I find so unique about you is you seem to be able to walk that tightrope better than anyone that I've seen in the industry. Like, I think that a lot of people that have seen you speak on stage, that have had anything to do with you, would say, yes, you're an extremely confident person, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone ever even the sniff of arrogance. And it's it's really interesting that I just it's hard to have both. And I don't understand how you can walk that tightrope so well. Is this something that came naturally to you, or is this something that was a learnt behavior?
This was I read this question before, and it was a tricky one to kind of come up with an answer for. But believe it or not, I don't like the spotlight. I don't like to be the center of attention. If while Birdie is nominated for a lot of awards, you'll probably see I don't go for any individual awards. So I don't want the spotlight on me. I want the spotlight on Birdie as a business and that brand. I understand that there is a personal brand that needs to sit alongside a business brand, and that has to be there as well. And that's why I play that role. But I think where I'm confident is areas that I understand and I'm an expert at. So I'm not the leader in AI, so I don't talk about AI. I'm not the leader in bringing graduate brokers on and upskilling them and training them. It's just not an area that I do well in my business. So I'm only confident because it's areas that I understand and I've spent years working on and have results on. That's where I'm confident. As far as humble, I just think I'm fairly I share a similar personality regardless if I'm talking to a CEO or I'm talking with a broker on their first day. It just doesn't bother me who I'm talking to and what they're like. And I think that's what I try to do is each conversation take some value from the conversation and give some value in each one. So that's all I'm looking to do in each kind of interaction and conversation with someone, is make sure that, both parties are getting value out of it. And that's what I'm looking to do.
Can I offer a couple of thoughts and maybe questions here, Nath? I've interviewed a lot of people over the years in my former version of the podcast, and I found that the people that were still, and I say this in inverted commas, on their way to trying to make it as successful, were the ones who were less comfortable talking about their failings and the things that didn't go well. They wanted to try and put across a story around it all goes so well. And I've tended to notice that the people who, quote unquote, have made it are actually very comfortable talking about all the things that didn't work and the mistakes made, the lessons learned, and what that's given them as a gift around how they can grow from those things. And it sounds to me like you're in that latter category around mistakes happen. We realize it, and as you've said, you can learn from them and embrace them and do better next time. And I think that gives a little bit more humility. In my experience, at least, it seems to. And that I think sometimes confidence can also come from purpose, and you seem to have a purpose, even if it's a people-driven purpose around culture and environment. Is if you have that level of clarity around who you are and what you stand for, I think it becomes easier, as you say, to play that role around what we're doing and why we exist, and therefore, stick to your knitting around the things that you are going to be good at, but also know it's coming from a position of purpose rather than just say prosperity or something that's based on self. It's very much based on others.
I think so. And I think if you can find that place where you understand you're not going to be, everything to everyone. I wear a t-shirt and sneakers into appointments, and not every client's going to relate to that. I wear a t-shirt and sneakers on stage when I spoke, and not everyone's going to relate to that. So I guess understanding that there are people who are going to connect with you and like you, and there are people who are not, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing. You don't have to be liked by everyone. I think that allows you to draw the right people in around your circle, and I'm lucky to have that with the kind of the brokers who I'm mates with and teamed up with. Is we've got a good circle where we can be really comfortable with our failings and really share where we're at. But yeah, again, it doesn't connect with everyone. There's certainly brokers who I do and don't connect with, and that's fine as well.
I'm going to challenge you on this a little bit, and I'm begrudgingly going to say this because I know you're going to use it against me later, but I don't think there's anyone in the industry that's probably more likable than you. Like like you say, you're not everything. You're not like I've never heard anyone speak a bad word about you, and to be honest, you've come up in conversations a lot over the years. You're always on stage. You Whether you like it or not, you have a lot of leverage in our industry. You're a popular personality and a very well liked person. And this leads me to a quote that comes from Alex Hormozy around kind, not nice. So I want to understand. Okay, so you have this persona in the industry of this really, you're the nice guy. You're the guy. Yeah. Like I keep saying throughout the podcast, you're very measured in your responses, right? So. Um, I was having a conversation a couple of weeks ago with a friend of ours. I won't mention his name, but we were talking around business owners and what it takes to be a really successful business owner. And I just come out and I just said, "You are a C word." I'm not going to say the word. It's a disgusting, disgusting word that I will never ever say in front of a female because it's so bad. But I need to prove a point here. And he's sort of a bit taken back by it. And I said, "No, no, no. The reason why I'm saying this is because to be a successful business owner, you need to be sometimes that you need to bite down on the mouth guard. You need to have that level of aggression. You need to be able to have those tough conversations. It's not about being that to your staff, but it's around you can't be everyone's friend, and you need to make tough decisions, and you need to have tough conversations with lenders or with aggregators or with BDMs, whatever the case may be. And even with your team, back to that kind, not nice, it's if you're nice to them, you're just going to keep showering them in praise when they're underperforming. So the kind thing to do is to have that conversation. So like running a high performance business like you are, how do you seem to be able to navigate that where you're able to maintain that nice guy persona in the business, but still have those tough conversations with whoever it may be as needed?
Yeah, I think Brene Brown says it. She says clear is kind, and so I think making sure that everybody's clear exactly where they stand is actually the kind thing to do. I don't think telling somebody who's underperforming that they're doing fine, their job is safe, everything's all good, and then blindsiding them with a termination is the right thing to do. So I think the way in which I do it at my team is I have one-on-ones every 4 weeks. So I have about 10 of those a week. Is I have a half an hour session with them. Where's your head at? What's happening at home? What's happening outside of work? And I think showing people that you genuinely care what's happening in their life is a way to better understand how they're performing at work and what's happening there. I don't think anybody who is terminated or anyone who quits, it shouldn't be a surprise for either party that that's about to happen. So if it is, that means there's an issue and breakdown with that. As far as being kind, I think what I try to do in any interaction, I said it before, it's just give value and take value in every interaction that I have. And I find the ROI pays off months, if not years down the track. So, I went around and did a couple of speaking gigs with James and got paid nothing for it, spent time away from the family. But what might happen is months down the track, it might be a broker that decides to connect in with Birdie and join our team off the back of hearing me talk a few years ago. So I know that putting good out into the world and doing good things and doing the right things will pay off. It might not be immediate, it might not be direct, but it comes slowly. And so that's what I'm just aiming to do, is just have a positive interaction with everyone and wait for that ROI to come. And it comes slow, but it definitely does come.
I have a similar, I'll explain it differently, but I think the same as you, right? I think around leverage. So there's not too many people in the industry that have as much leverage as what you do, and it's been built over years, right? It's one of these things that you're out there, you're out there on stage, you're on podcasts like this, you're speaking, you have a very big social media following, right? And what you're doing is everyone's starting to get to understand who you are, what you're about, what drives you, and you're creating this leverage in the industry. People, when you talk, people listen, but it doesn't, and it doesn't matter. There could be people new to industry that could be saying the exact same things that you're saying and saying them in the exact same way, but they're not going to have the impact because they don't have the leverage in the industry that somebody like yourself does. So it's again, I think we're on the same page with this. This is just the way that I've articulated in my mind, and I follow you really closely, and I've studied you for a long time, and I'm trying to emulate it in a different way, right? We do different things, but we're trying to pretty much land in the same space, I think.
I think you've got to have runs on the board, right? If you listen to anyone talk or take advice from everyone, you want to know that they've got those runs on the board before you take the advice. And it's the same reason why I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the latest and greatest in AI is, because it's not my area of expertise. And you'll look me up and go, well, they don't do any AI on their website. They don't have any tech AI platforms there. So I would lose all credibility with doing it. So if I talk on topics that I have runs on the board, that I can show and evidence the fact that I've had success there, it gives me the right to talk on that topic.
Can I ask a question that I've always wanted to know the answer to, which is this? Why do you use the generic AFG website template rather than something that could help communicate your value proposition substantially more impactfully? And given that you're building a brand, not just a small one-man show.
Yeah. We will at some stage move across, and the reason why we use a white label one at the moment is it's compliant. It's regularly updated and it shows evidence that the business is there. My feel is that people are going to be more reliant on socials for looking up. So they use a website to make sure that the business is current and active and open, but then they use the socials to actually see what's happening within that business. And so we've opted to pour more money into our socials and our platforms there, be active there, and clients use that as a way of discovering and finding out about Birdie and the brand, as opposed to the website. So will we do it? Definitely we'll do it at some stage, but at the moment we have a website that is, number one, compliant, number two, has calculators running in the background, it's all up to date. If anything changes within industry, it's updated in real time. If the team changes, it's all updated in real time. So it is a bit of a set and forget, and we can pour our energy into the social projects that we want to work on.
Fair enough. Yeah, I've always been intrigued by that because, it's clearly not a priority. If it was, it would have been done at some point in the past. And as he's just said, is your energy and efforts going to where you think you'll get the best ROI from?
Yep.
Fair enough.
Mate, I'm pretty much finished up with the quotes. Before we move on to the next thing, I'm just going to put you on the spot here. Is there any particular quote that has been impactful or really meaningful to you that sort of springs to mind after the conversation we've had thus far in the podcast?
Look, I've got an array of quotes that I've had for a long period of time. Every year, our team has a mantra for the year. So I don't know if you've got it on under here, but our logo changes every year. Our team shirts in the office change every year with a new and different logo on what this year means to us. Last year it was Step Up, and that was all about raising the standard of Birdie and doing what was uncomfortable to me and letting go of some people who had the tenure there but weren't meeting standards. So that was our goal last year, was to keep the same size team but improve the efficiencies across the team. And this year's mantra is ride the wave. We knew there was a big swell of leads coming in. We knew that the volume would increase, and it was all about getting those process and efficiencies right. So when they came through this year, we're ready to go. And that's what we've seen kind of record volumes from a settlement perspective from our team this year, based on the fact they're in a position to do that. The two big ones when starting the business, one that has stayed true to me the whole time is stay uncomfortable. For me, that's one that I constantly think about, is making sure that I'm consistently pushing myself, consistently working towards being uncomfortable in business, and that seems to have served me well. So that's one that I'm going to continue to do. And I'll tell you the one when I very first started the business, which has certainly served me well. And if you're a new broker, it's one that has worked well for me. And when I started Birdie, my mantra was head down, hold your breath for 10 years. That's what I said to myself. And if we looked at the first few years of Birdie kicking off, we had a royal commission into our industry that nearly shut down our whole industry. We had 2 bouts of COVID come through. So if I'm 18 months into business and a royal commission comes across, well, my mantra was, well, I've still got 8.5 years of holding my breath. Just keep going, keep going. And so that goal of saying I'm not coming up for air for 10 years has kept driving me through, no matter what the noise out there, either in industry or outer industry is. The noise has been dampened and quietened based on that mantra of head down, hold your breath.
Mate, this is so funny. I'm listening to you, and these are the first times I've heard you say these quotes. And I'm going to tell you about 2 affirmations that I had on the mirror in my bathroom when I started my business. One was be comfortable being uncomfortable. So essentially the same thing. And I drove it so hard for so long that when I have anxiety in the business, it's because things are too comfortable. Things get comfortable, and I'm like, this does not feel natural to me, and I've got to do something. I've got to blow it up. We've got to go hard again. And then as soon as we're running, I'm like, oh, I'm right. So 100%. And the other one, like you said, hold your breath for 10 years. One of the other affirmations I had, I don't even know where I found this or whether I come up with it myself, was that I will become an overnight success. The only thing is, it will take me 10 years to do it. So I remember putting this on my bathroom mirror when I first started. No one knew who I was. No one knew what I did. To be honest, I wasn't very good anyway. So why would anybody give me the time of day? And I envisioned that one day, 10 years from now, people would look back and go, wow, like, where did this guy come from? Look at this amazing business. Look at what he's accomplished. He's literally come from nowhere. When the reality was, it was 10 years of grinding. I was an overnight, yeah, from the outside, externally, I looked like an overnight success, but there was so much that went into getting there. So your quotes that have been front of mind for you starting out your business seem to be very similar to the quotes that I've had starting out, which is probably why we're friends.
Well, I think yeah, there's 2 commonalities I've seen with successful brokers at Birdie. And one touches on that. One is tenacity and grit. Just regardless of whether we have introverts, extroverts, people who have good referral partners, people who are good at social online, you must have tenacity. So that's the first one. The other one that's interesting is having a supportive partner is the other one that I found as a common ground, is that you need to have a supportive partner in order to make it. We've had a couple who have been phenomenal brokers at Birdie, but haven't had that supportive partner that just can't get there. So they're the 2 common traits I've seen of all brokers out there in industry. They're the 2 I think that are super important. And I know, Trav, I know you've got both.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm just going to
wholeheartedly
comment on
agree
that,
with the
team, just
supportive
because.
partner. For those of you that don't, my wife is Swiss. She has zero understanding on the finance industry, does not understand how mortgages work, and without fail, would be the most influential person to the success that I've experienced in the business. And considering she has no understanding on what I do, it doesn't really make sense. But without her support, there's none of this is possible. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. But yeah, so
Can I just comment for the people who have heard that and they're currently single and they're downloading Tinder as we speak? Maybe they don't need to necessarily go out and be on the hunt for a relationship in order to create success. There might be other ways to approach that, just in case they're in that
yeah,
point of their life journey. That's
yeah,
all. Just something to be aware of.
yeah.
Could I just comment on it as well, Nathan? In years gone by, uh, I worked at Yellow Pages, and we used to win some fairly significant awards, and one of those was an international trip for both the person who qualified for it and also their partner, and so on every one of the trips that I went on, there was always a gala dinner, and at that gala dinner, we always had the salespeople stand up and applaud their partners, because we were expressing thanks and gratitude to the partners to help contribute to the success that people achieve. Now, I thought that was a really, really good thing to do. Firstly, to actually have the partners come along was great, and then to be able to help celebrate their support, I thought was really thoughtful and considerate of the company as well.
No,
Yeah.
I really like that actually. That's a really we should be doing something like that in our industry. Like I think probably not enough is said about the support that goes in behind what we do as business owners. I find what we do as business owners is very, very selfish. It's what for me to grow the business, I had to focus solely on one thing, and I needed the support. And it can be quite, yes, I'm doing it for selfless reasons. I'm doing it to provide for my family, and I'm doing it to build a future and keep a roof over our head. But the act of what it the act of building the business, it's quite a selfish endeavor, I think. So you make a really good point, James. I think we probably need to stop, and we need to give kudos to those that are around us that support us, and allow us to operate at the standard that we need to drive success in our business.
Well, I can say this is that in the early days of me running my company, it certainly wasn't running as well as it is now, and there was been zero times in 12 plus years, zero, that my partner's ever questioned, are you doing the right thing? Are you sure about this? Do you know what you're going to do, etc. There was zero hassle, if you like, from her. And it's distinctly possible she's thought many things, but she said zero of them. And the fact that she said nothing that ever caused me to have doubt. I had enough of it myself in the early days when I'd be on Seek, in those very early days. It's like, Christ almighty, I could be out there, in a national sales gig or a general manager, this, that, and the other. But that wavered over time, and it certainly was given significant support by virtue of the fact that there was nothing that was coming out negative, that made the journey a little bit easier. Not easy, but easier.
Yeah, I joke, I say that with my wife, I could finish work today and come home and say, I sold the business today. We're going into a women's clothing brand. And she'd be like, that's great. You succeeded everything, Trav. I'm sure we'll be a success. And I'd be like, no, we won't. I will be bankrupt in 3 months. This is a stupid idea. So I get so much love and support from her, and it's great that she thinks that I'm going to be so successful at any endeavor. But the reality is, it's not a fact. So that's why I have people like Nate and people like you, James, that I can bounce my ideas off, and you can reset some of those beliefs and stuff. So yeah, it's really great it's really important to have that love and support. But like you said, it's also good. You also need those people around you that can pull you back, or reframe some of your thought processes to make sure that you don't make these missteps.
Well, my wife has a very low tolerance for risk, and I have an above average tolerance for risk. So what it makes me do is, if ever I do want to take a invest in the business, or invest personally, I have to have a business plan and strategy played out to talk to her about what does worst case scenario look like, how does that play out if this happened, what could we do. uh, so so she works slightly differently, where she is actually ultra conservative and needs to have it mapped out and planned. So it makes me make sure think through that strategy before I present it to her and discuss it with her, because she's going to be asking those questions.
I think that's really smart. I mean, just as a way of operating a business, it's smart anyway, regardless of her risk profile. Is simply on courtesy of understanding what's the upside here versus the downside. It's actually intelligent and responsible business ownership and decision making.
Well, even launching, the fourth business, I had to speak with her first of all about what the monetary investment is into it, but also the time, and the question that I knew she'd want to know straight away was, well, where does this time come from? Are we eating into family time? Is it coming out of other areas of the business? And so I had to go through and work out, well, how am I splitting and separating out my time? And interestingly enough, for this financial year, I've got a target that I want to settle under this financial year. I want to settle under a certain target of
For
from
you
a volume
personally?
perspective for me personally. So
Yeah.
cut my settlements back by about a third. Do a third of the settlements I did last financial year, I'm planning to do this year. And that's where I'm aiming to carve a lot of that time out, is take it from there and invest that in the other business, but also spend a lot more time as kind of the GM of Birdie and working across the different areas of the business. And so, but I had to have the answer to that question, because that to her is the only concern is, well, what's a monetary investment and what's a time investment and where does it come from? And how do we stop that from leaking into the family time? And so I had to have those answers before we kicked off the new business.
I think that's a really healthy relationship, by the way.
That leads me into a question. Actually, I want to, with your permission, Nath, I want to bring up a private conversation we have. It's a private conversation that you and I had a couple months ago. And I think it's really important for our listeners to sort of get some level of understanding on it. So, look, you sent me a message maybe 2 months ago now, and I'm going to read the message out, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. So, the message that would come from you, the text message that come from you was, "Can I do a humble brag? Can't do it with anyone else, but hit a massive milestone and have to tell somebody." So look, I'm not going to go into detail around numbers or what the goal was, but I am going to say that it was an unbelievable goal. Massive, massive goal for those of you at home. Like, it was very, very impressive, right? So first of all, I was really humbled that you felt that you could share and celebrate this with me. And secondly, it kind of made me sad that you'd accomplished something that was so unbelievable, and your primary concern was how publicizing this amazing feat would be viewed by our peers. Like, I agree with you that publicizing this feat would have been met with like some level of, let's call it hate or envy. And if I'm being completely honest, this pisses me off. Like I understand we live in Australia and we have tall poppy syndrome. It's almost an Australian pastime, right? To run down those who are successful. But I guess I just want to I just want to talk a little bit around the conversation we had around that, and sort of get your insight. So you remember the conversation, Nate?
Yeah, I do. I think we're going to go back to a Simon Sinek quote there that he talks about the fact that if you've got bad news, we've probably got 10 or 12 friends each we can lean on to share that bad news with. But if we have good news, we often have far less people we can share that good news with. And I mean, this one was just a combination of a statistic and a metric of settlement numbers that people outside of industry don't really understand. So for them, it wouldn't have held a lot of value in that. And then in industry, whether people are writing or not writing these numbers, they talk about it a lot. And so publicizing it publicly, to me, didn't have a lot of value. It's not we don't normally focus on our settlement metrics specifically as a team. We focus on a lot of other metrics, but it was one, I guess, that, personally, when I started Birdie, was not even in the realm of like a stretch goal. It was just so stupidly far beyond that I just
Couldn't even comprehend it back then.
never even would have planned to put that goal in place. And so just hitting it was something that I was personally proud of. I think a lot of the time I'm super proud of the team and the efforts they put in, and love, championing them in their success. But this was one that I actually stopped at for a minute and go, shit, I'm proud of myself here. Like, I'm really proud of what I've done here, and how we've gotten to this point. And, the number's just a number, but the number's a reflection of a lot of other tasks and processes and team that have been built to make that number come up. And yeah, it was just, again, just nice to share it with a mate who probably understood the significance of it, but also, just stop for a minute and be proud of the work I've done.
Yeah. So, like, in this conversation, like, this is what you've accomplished is something that I dreamed to emulate one day, right? So hearing you talk through your accomplishment, I didn't feel envious. Like, first of all, I was so proud because you and I had a conversation probably 3 months prior to this, and you told me this year I'm going after it. I'm going to go after it this year, and to see you actually attain that goal, to bite down on the mouth guard and go after it, like, it was so amazing to actually hear you set that goal and then actually go out and achieve it. And secondly, you've shown me that you forged the way. There's a roadmap there now for me to go and achieve similar feats, right? So for those of you listening at home, I'll challenge you on this. Like, celebrate this. I'm not saying go and promote it and do, like, it might just mean having a conversation with that right person. This what we do as business owners, it can be extremely lonely. We're constantly surrounded by people. You've got 40 staff, Nate. I got 15, right? Oh, on a normal day, I might take 50 or 60 phone calls. I'm constantly talking to people. And if I'm being completely honest, it can be lonely because people don't understand the decisions that I make, the pressures that are placed upon me. A lot of these pressures are placed upon me by myself, by me myself. So I'm not sitting here crying about it, but having a conversation with somebody like yourself, somebody that's gone through it, and celebrating those wins, like you said, no one really can understand how hard you work and what it takes to get there. So actually celebrating those things, it, it it can be a bit of a thankless job sometimes. People see from the outside the cars and the holidays and all these amazing things that a successful business owner has, but it can be quite a lonely existence. So I challenge our listeners to actually, when you have a win, go and celebrate. Go and celebrate it with somebody you trust. Go and celebrate it with a mate, and allow them to celebrate it with you. Because I feel like we don't do this enough in the industry, and this is why I wanted to bring this up because
I don't know
I
if we
feel
don't
like
do
it's
it enough.
something. I feel like
I
it's something
reckon.
that as an industry we can be better at.
Uh, I gotta say, I reckon the industry does overkill of some of this stuff. Like, personally, to be devil's advocate for one moment, it's like you could spend your entire career at just applying for awards in this industry and do nothing else. So I'm not sure that we need necessarily uh, that there's not enough of it, but maybe doing it in a more private manner with people that care about it and that respect the effort that's gone into it. I think is a really valuable and sustainable and effective way to go about it. And I think, Trav, what you're also saying is enjoy the journey and not just the destination.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's not always about getting up on stage, and it's around having that meaningful conversation with somebody who you respect and can understand. So it's not like as I said, like that conversation that Nathan and I had, it was only the two of us. This is, I know we're bringing it up in a public forum, but we're not going into any great detail with it. But yeah, I'll be honest, like I remember coming, like, I think we had that conversation on a weekend, and it was a bit of back and forth between Nathan and I, and then my wife was talking to me afternoon, and she's like, "You seem to be in such a really good mood," and I'm just like, "Oh, I was just chatting to Nath, like he's achieved this, and this has happened, and that's happened, and it filled me with excitement. It put me in a great mood. It made me motivated. I think the conversation happened on Saturday, and I was excited to get into work on Monday. It was driving me. So yeah, I think it's important that we do that if and when the time is right.
I think it's more just celebrating the achievement for the right reason, right? Not, it's a combination of what you both said there, James. It's not for ego or self promotion. It's purely just to reflect on, perhaps where you started and where you've gotten to, and how you've gotten there, and part of that was just, yeah, sharing it with the right people at the right time, and I told Trav about what I plan to do this year, and I reflected on my role as a leader in 2024 and scored myself a 6 out of 10. I thought I'd done a pretty mediocre job of being a leader, and I had some real clear goals on what I wanted to focus on for this year. I wanted to focus a lot on that recruitment pipeline, making sure that one's nice and healthy and stays sustainable throughout the year. And also focusing back on that flagship business, on the broking business, and now we had our conveyancing and property business was running fairly autonomously, was getting back in, driving the broking business, using that to generate more leads to spit out to the other businesses, and it was just nice to see that this number was a reflection on that refocus on what I needed to work on and show it was working.
Yeah, I like it.
Excellent.
I think it's about appreciating those moments and decisions and actions and the effort and being able to do that with someone that recognizes and understands what that takes as well. As you said, it's talking about that to someone that's external may not have as much gravitas, but knowing that you can share it with a colleague that understands and appreciates what's gone into making that happen is certainly, I think, a better place to do that from.
Mate, Nathan, I want to play a little game with you now. So I've just created this game. The game is called Where Were We? So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. We've had quite a lot of conversations over the years and quite a lot of beers and been to some amazing places and done some cool things. And these are some things that we've spoken about and have remained with me. And I want to see if you can actually remember when we had the conversation. So the first one is around buying time. I had a conversation with you at one point, and you were explaining to me the premise of buying time. Do you remember? First of all, do you remember where we were?
I'm not going to be good at this game. This one's going to be a worry. Buying time. I would guess we were at were we Tweed River that time?
No,
Was it on the golf course? No.
no,
I've got
way
no idea
before
where we
that.
were then. Way before that. No.
Way before
I've
that.
got no idea. No idea where we were.
Okay. All right. We
Sydney?
were at the final dinner for year one of Broker Academy. So this conversation circular. Well, actually, how about so I will look, I'm gonna give a very quick story and then I'm gonna let you talk about it. So this is probably what springboarded my career, right? I was invited to the Broker Academy. For those of you that don't know, it's 25 up and coming brokers from around Australia that get together, Harvard Business School professors. I was lucky enough to be sitting across from you at the table, and we were having some conversations around. I was looking at hiring my first onshore person, and we had the conversation around buying time. And so, what I'll do is you will explain it so much better than I will. So, I'll let you explain your theory around buying time.
Yeah, look, I think it was to do with recruiting and hiring and looking at the cost to hire somebody. So often we look at that final dollar figure and what it will actually cost and where do we come up with the money. And the way I guess I'm reframing that is saying to somebody, if you bought 40 hours for $2,000, could you make more than $2,000 in 40 hours? So it was about the gamble of saying, well, what is the investment and do you back yourself that you could, I mean, let's say your average loan's $500,000 or so. That means you've got probably 60 hours to get one more loan. For me, that's a no-brainer. You can do that easily. If I've got 60 hours more of my time, I can get another loan in that time, and that's a gamble I'm taking there.
Yeah, that was it. That was yep. The second one, it's going to be hard for you to pick a time because you've told me this quite a few times. So it's around 500 5-star reviews or 5,000 4.8-star reviews.
Yeah, I don't know where we were when we said this one. I'd be guessing again, but yeah, I definitely remember. I definitely remember that quote, and this is probably back to your one of you know, good isn't good enough is challenging you on that. Is what's the sacrifice for scale?
Yeah, we've had this conversation quite a few times. The one that rings a bell with me is probably you and I doing when a morning walk and a coffee at Strategics when we were at Noosa a couple of years ago. probably it's quite a good morning. Just you and I just went for I think we went for a swim and went for a walk. We talked a lot of family and we talked a lot of things. But this was one of the things that sort of rung true with me. And whilst I wholeheartedly agree with you on this, there's something internally in me that just I'm pretty good at reframing and resetting my beliefs when I'm aware that I'm wrong. This is one of the ones that I'll be honest, I agree with you. I think you're right here, but I still struggle with, and it's something that I'm just gonna need to. Something that I just need to keep working through, right? So, but yeah. Anyway,
Well, which one are you leaning towards, Nath? So I'm not clear on this. I understand the concept of 500 5-star reviews and 5,000 4.8. Which one would you take?
me.
Uh,
No,
So
no.
you go, Nath.
well, I just think there is some level of sacrifice at scale. I think that was kind of the methodology behind that, and letting go of the control of being a business owner and allowing a team to run the business under you. And there's risk with doing that. Anytime you bring another person on, they wear your t-shirt, they wear your brand, and there's a risk that something could go wrong. Um, and so every time you scale, there is a risk to your business and your brand. And so for me, it was a matter of talking to Trav about where he was in his business and how does he's kind of hit this limit of his time and his capacity, and how does he continue to grow. And the only way to do that was to let go of the reins a little bit, acknowledge the fact that there is risk associated with that, and things can go wrong. And yeah, striving towards letting go of the reins and seeing what happens.
Definitely. I got one more question. This is not something you told me, but something funny nonetheless. When was the first time you ever felt like punching me?
What day did we first meet? I think I think it was probably the Harvard night as well. We had a it fell on a state of origin night as well, and we were down in Sydney and New South Wales lost the state of origin, and you came alongside a fellow New South Welshman who was sitting next to me with a saucer full of milk, and called us cats. So I think you nearly got your head punched in at that point there. But first of many times we wanted to.
Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of, mate. Like a one-eyed Queenslander I was. We'd won that night, and let's say I wasn't a gracious winner. I'd had a few beers, but yeah,
Let us know. Yeah.
good night. Good night. So, James, is there anything that you wanted to chime in with at this point?
No, I've been happy to interject as I've already done throughout the interview, and it's been great to have this conversation. And as you've already said at the start, you just get Nathan's perspective and an understanding on a number of different things that he does, and why Birdie Wealth is in the position that it's in.
Perfect, mate. So, Nath, before we finish up, I just wholeheartedly just want to, mate, thank you for obviously coming on the podcast today, and hopefully our listeners get some value out of your insights and what we've discussed here today. But in a public forum, I personally want to thank you for everything you've done for me. You've there's probably there wouldn't be anyone in this industry that's had more impact on me in a professional and a personal sense than you. You're somebody that I've always looked up to, the way that you operate your business ethics, the way you show up for your family. You, as I said, you're one of the most impressive people I've ever met, mate. And I really, really value our friendship, and mate, I hope it continues for years to come.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's yeah, we've got a good little group of brokers who kind of traveling in that same part of our lives at the moment, where we're young parents, reasonably young business owners, still thinking we're 20, trying to get through each day. And yeah, it's just an enjoyable way to run and operate businesses.
On behalf of our audience, mate, thanks very much for making yourself available to share your journey, share more about your experience, your knowledge, and the shortcomings as much as the wins as well, and the humility that goes along with it. And congrats on everything you have done, and look forward to hearing about how things will continue to evolve and progress for you and for the business, and this fourth arm that you'll be introducing fairly soon.
Perfect. Thanks, gents.
Thanks, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.